You have maintained complete silence since the relationship ended or since the last time the avoidant withdrew, protecting yourself through absence after exhausting yourself attempting to maintain connection with someone whose patterns demonstrated they could not meet your needs. The silence has extended for weeks or months, creating space where you have begun healing, where you have redirected your energy toward your own life, where you have started accepting that the avoidant lacks capacity for the relationship you deserve, yet questions persist beneath your healing. Does the avoidant think about you? Do they miss you? Are they waiting for you to reach out? Or have they moved on completely without looking back? These questions intensify when you notice specific signs that suggest the avoidant has not moved forward as completely as their silence implies. Signs that indicate they are aware of your life, that they are positioning themselves in ways that create opportunities for contact, that they are locked in psychological state where they want reconnection but cannot initiate it themselves. You observe that the avoidant views your social media stories despite never liking or commenting, demonstrating they are monitoring your life while maintaining appearance of disengagement. You notice they appear in places or contexts where you might encounter them, suggesting their presence is not coincidental, but rather reflects unconscious or conscious desire to create opportunities for organic reconnection that would not require vulnerable direct pursuit. You hear through mutual connections that the avoidant asks about you, that they demonstrate interest in your well-being or your activities despite maintaining silence in direct communication with you. You sense that the avoidant has not released you despite their silence, that they remain psychologically oriented toward you while simultaneously unable or unwilling to reach out directly because doing so would require vulnerability. Their defended structure resists even when their attachment to you generates profound longing. This recognition creates a crucial decision point. The avoidant appears to be waiting for you to break the silence, to make the first move that would allow reconnection without requiring them to risk the rejection and vulnerability that direct pursuit would demand. Part of you feels tempted to reach out, to test whether your sense that they are waiting is accurate, to potentially restore connection with someone you still care about despite their patterns having necessitated your withdrawal. Yet another part of you recognizes that reaching out first would reward exactly the dynamic that harmed you throughout the relationship, the dynamic where you did the relational work, where you bridged the distance their withdrawal created, where you provided the vulnerability and initiative their defended position prevented them from offering. Understanding the signs that indicate the avoidant is waiting for you to reach out allows you to make an informed decision about whether to break your silence or whether to maintain boundaries that protect you from re-entering dynamic where you provide maximum investment while they maintain defended position that prevents adequate reciprocation. They're monitoring your life while maintaining their silence. The avoidant maintains complete radio silence in direct communication with you. No messages, no calls, no explicit contact that would reveal their continued interest or investment. This silence creates appearance of complete disengagement, suggesting they have moved forward without you, that they are unbothered by the separation, that they have released whatever minimal attachment they demonstrated during the relationship. The silence communicates through its completeness that you no longer occupy their thoughts, that they are content in your absence, that they have no desire to restore connection or to understand how you are navigating life without them. Yet beneath this performed disengagement exists entirely different reality that specific behavioral patterns reveal. The avoidant is actively monitoring your life, tracking your activities, maintaining ongoing awareness of your state despite their silence, suggesting they have moved on completely. The monitoring manifests most obviously through social media engagement that stops just short of direct interaction. The avoidant views your Instagram stories consistently, appearing in your viewer list with regularity that contradicts any claim they are not thinking about you or tracking your life. They do not like your posts or comment, maintaining plausible deniability about their interest by avoiding explicit engagement that would reveal they are paying attention. Yet the consistent viewing demonstrates they are checking your profile regularly, consuming information about your activities and your state, maintaining active awareness of your life despite their direct communication silence, suggesting complete disconnection. The pattern is too consistent to be coincidental. If they were genuinely disengaged, they would not reliably appear among your story viewers, would not check your profile with frequency that ensures they miss no update you share. The avoidant may also monitor you through less direct channels that provide information while maintaining their appearance of disengagement. They ask mutual friends about you, inquiring about your well-being or your activities with studied casualness that attempts to disguise the genuine interest driving their questions. They maintain connection with people in your social circle specifically because those connections provide access to information about you that they cannot obtain directly without breaking their silence. They demonstrate knowledge about recent events in your life that they could only possess if they were actively seeking information about you through whatever channels remain available despite the absence of direct contact between you. The monitoring also reveals itself through timing patterns that suggest the avoidant is paying closer attention than their silence implies. They view your stories within minutes of you posting them, demonstrating they have notifications enabled for your activity, or that they check your profile with such frequency that they encounter new content almost immediately. This rapid viewing contradicts the avoidance performed indifference. Someone genuinely disengaged would not encounter your content so quickly because they would not be monitoring your profile with the vigilance such rapid viewing requires. The speed of their viewing exposes that you remain priority in their attention despite their behavior suggesting you no longer matter to them. The selective nature of what the avoidant monitors also provides diagnostic information about their internal state. They may view stories that show you enjoying life, that demonstrate you thriving without them, with particular consistency, suggesting they are tracking whether you have moved on, whether you appear happy in their absence, whether you show signs of being over them. The avoidance nervous system needs this information to regulate their own anxiety about the separation, to assess whether you remain potentially available if they decided to reach out, to monitor whether they need to act before you become completely unavailable through moving on or through involvement with someone new. The monitoring serves the avoidant's defended needs by providing information that allows them to maintain sense of control over the situation without requiring the vulnerability of direct contact. The avoidance monitoring may increase in intensity when you demonstrate signs of moving forward or when you display happiness that suggests you are thriving in their absence. The avoidant who views your stories occasionally may begin viewing them consistently when you post content showing you on dates, appearing happy with friends, achieving goals, or otherwise demonstrating that your life continues satisfyingly without them. This increased monitoring when you show signs of moving on reveals that the avoidant's attachment to you intensifies specifically when they fear losing you permanently, that their interest activates most strongly when they perceive threat that you may become genuinely unavailable rather than remaining in their orbit despite the silence between you. The disconnect between the avoidance monitoring behavior and their communication silence exposes the defended nature of their position. Someone genuinely disengaged would neither monitor consistently nor maintain communication silence. They would either reach out if interested or would fail to track your life if uninterested. The combination of active monitoring with sustained silence reveals that the avoidant wants information about you, wants to maintain awareness of your state, wants to keep you in their psychological awareness while simultaneously avoiding the vulnerability that direct contact would require. The monitoring allows them to stay connected to you in one directional way that requires no risk on their part, that exposes them to no potential rejection, that maintains their defended position while satisfying their attachment-driven need to know about you. Understanding the significance of the avoidance monitoring while maintaining silence requires recognizing that this pattern demonstrates their continued investment in you, despite their behavior suggesting disengagement. The avoidant who has genuinely moved on does not consistently track your life through whatever channels remain available. The consistent monitoring proves you occupy ongoing space in their awareness, that they care about your state enough to seek information about it regularly, that they have not released you despite their silence, communicating that they have. Yet, the monitoring combined with silence also reveals that the avoidant wants you to bridge the distance their defended position creates, that they are consuming information about you while providing none about themselves, that they are positioned to receive your contact if you reach out, while avoiding the risk of reaching out themselves and facing potential rejection that their patterns may have earned. Their pride prevents the first move, but their attachment prevents moving on. The avoidant exists in psychological stalemate where two powerful opposing forces create paralysis that only your action can resolve. The first force, their defended pride and their fear of vulnerable pursuit, prevents them from reaching out directly to initiate reconnection. The second force, their genuine attachment to you that persists despite their defended presentation, prevents them from moving forward completely and releasing you from their internal world. These opposing forces create situations where the avoidant remains stuck, unable to move towards you through direct contact, yet unable to move away from you through genuine disengagement, waiting in psychological limbo for you to make the move their defensive structure prevents them from making. The pride that prevents the avoidant from reaching out first operates through multiple psychological mechanisms that combine to make direct pursuit feel impossible despite their desire for reconnection. The avoidant's defended self-concept requires that they appear unbothered by the separation, that they demonstrate they can function independently without needing connection, that they maintain appearance of complete self-sufficiency that reaching out would contradict. Initiating contact after a period of silence would require the avoidant to acknowledge implicitly that they miss you, that they have been affected by your absence, that they need or want something from you. All admissions that their defensive structure is organized specifically to prevent. The avoidant's pride will not allow them to reveal that you matter enough to them, that your absence has generated sufficient discomfort to motivate their reaching out. The avoidant also fears the vulnerability of pursuing you because pursuit carries risk of rejection that their defensive structure evolved specifically to avoid. If they reach out and you do not respond warmly, if you establish boundaries, if you communicate that you have moved on, they face explicit rejection that would confirm their core wound, that being known leads to being rejected, that revealing they care opens them to being hurt, that vulnerability results in abandonment. The avoidant's entire defensive structure exists to prevent experiencing this rejection, making the risk of reaching out feel psychologically impossible, even when their attachment to you generates strong desire for reconnection. The potential pain of rejection overrides the actual pain of separation, keeping the avoidant locked in defended position where they avoid the risk of pursuing you despite suffering in your absence. The avoidant may also believe that they lack standing to reach out because their patterns created the separation. Some part of the avoidant recognizes that their behavior necessitated your withdrawal, that their defended limitations made the relationship unsustainable, that you established silence to protect yourself from patterns they demonstrated consistently. This recognition creates shame that prevents reaching out. The avoidant feels they have no right to contact you after their patterns harmed you, that initiating contact would be selfish imposition that prioritizes their desire for reconnection over your need for distance, that they should respect your silence rather than violating it to serve their own needs. The shame combines with pride to make reaching out feel impossible even when the avoidant desires reconnection intensely. Yet despite all these forces preventing the avoidant from reaching out, equally powerful attachment prevents them from genuinely moving on. The avoidant discovers they cannot redirect their emotional energy away from you toward building new connections or toward accepting life without you. They compare everyone to you and find them insufficient. They cannot imagine satisfying future that does not include you in some capacity. They think about you constantly despite attempting to move their attention elsewhere. They maintain hope that somehow reconnection will occur despite their unwillingness to initiate that reconnection themselves. The attachment that developed during the relationship, attachment their defensive structure could not prevent despite their patterns, suggesting they barely invested, persists after separation in ways the avoidant cannot simply decide to release through force of will. This attachment that prevents moving on manifests through the monitoring behaviors, through the avoidant maintaining themselves in your orbit despite the silence, through their inability to commit fully to new relationships or new directions that would definitively close the door on potential future with you. The avoidant keeps certain options open, not moving to distant city, not fully committing to someone new, not making decisions that would create impossible distance between you, because some part of them maintains hope or expectation that reconnection will eventually occur. The avoidant cannot move on because moving on would require accepting permanent loss of you. And their attachment makes that permanent loss feel psychologically intolerable, despite their defended position, preventing them from acting to prevent that loss. The stalemate between pride preventing pursuit and attachment preventing release creates a situation where the avoidant is waiting, consciously or unconsciously, for you to resolve their psychological paralysis by reaching out first. If you initiate contact, the avoidant can respond without having to make vulnerable first move themselves, can reconnect without having to admit explicitly that they missed you or needed you, can resolve the stalemate without facing the rejection risk that pursuing you would create. Your reaching out would provide the avoidant with what they want, reconnection with you, while allowing them to maintain defended position by receiving your pursuit rather than having to offer their own. The avoidant may generate elaborate rationalizations for why you should reach out first, rather than them reaching out. They may tell themselves that you were the one who established the silence, so you should be the one to break it. They may characterize their respect for your need for space as reason for their continued silence, positioning their failure to reach out as consideration for you, rather than as their own defensive limitation. They may convince themselves that if you truly wanted reconnection, you would reach out, that your silence means you have moved on, that therefore reaching out would be unwelcome. All rationalizations that protect their pride while avoiding acknowledgement that their defensive structure prevents them from making the move their attachment motivates them to make. Understanding the stalemate between the avoidant's pride and their attachment reveals why they may be waiting for you to reach out, despite that waiting being their defended choice rather than your responsibility. The avoidant has created situation through their own psychological limitations where they want reconnection but cannot pursue it, where they cannot move on but will not move toward you, where they remain stuck waiting for you to resolve the paralysis their defensive structure created. Recognizing this dynamic allows you to see clearly that reaching out first would reward their defended position, would reinforce the pattern where you do the relational work while they remain defended, would restore dynamic where your vulnerability compensates for their inability to offer equivalent vulnerability themselves. They've positioned themselves to be accidentally visible to you. The avoidant demonstrates pattern of appearing in contexts, locations, or situations where encountering you becomes more likely than random chance would predict, suggesting their presence is not coincidental but rather reflects unconscious or conscious strategy to create opportunities for organic reconnection that would not require vulnerable direct pursuit. These strategic positioning behaviors allow the avoidant to maintain their defended stance of not reaching out directly while simultaneously increasing probability that circumstances will create contact that appears natural rather than intentionally pursued. The avoidant can then respond to contact that emerges from these manufactured opportunities without having to take responsibility for initiating reconnection, preserving their pride and their defended self-concept while potentially achieving the reconnection their attachment motivates them to desire. The strategic visibility manifests through the avoidant's sudden presence in social contexts they know you frequent or participate in. The avoidant, who never attended certain social gatherings during the relationship, begins appearing at events where you are likely to be present. They start frequenting coffee shop or gym they know you use regularly. They attend activities or join groups that overlap with your social circle despite having shown no previous interest in these contexts. The timing and location of these appearances suggest the avoidant has gathered information about your routines and your social activities, possibly through the monitoring they conduct through social media or through mutual connections, and has positioned themselves in spaces where accidental encounter becomes probable. The avoidant's strategic positioning also reveals itself through their social media behavior beyond mere viewing of your content. They may post content or stories timed to appear when you are most likely to be checking your phone or scrolling through updates. They share posts about activities, locations, or interests that overlap with yours, creating impression of continued compatibility or shared life that might prompt you to reach out. They post content that communicates they are doing well, appearing happy, social, thriving, calculated to generate your curiosity or your concern about whether they have moved on, potentially motivating you to break silence to assess their actual state. The avoidant is not posting randomly, but rather is curating their visible presence in ways designed to maintain their presence in your awareness, while appearing not to be directly pursuing your attention. The strategic nature of the avoidance positioning becomes particularly clear when you notice they appear specifically during periods when you have demonstrated signs of moving forward. The avoidant who has been absent from your regular context suddenly appears after you post content showing you happy, after you mention in conversation that reaches them through mutual connections that you are doing well, after they perceive through whatever information they gather that you may be genuinely releasing them. The timing reveals that their positioning is reactive rather than coincidental. They are responding to perceived threat of losing you permanently by increasing their visible presence in your orbit, creating opportunities for reconnection before you move beyond their reach. The avoidant also engineers situations where mutual friends might facilitate contact without the avoidant having to initiate directly. They maintain or intensify friendships with people in your social circle specifically because those relationships increase probability of ending up in same social contexts as you. They may even suggest to mutual friends that group gatherings or activities should include you, positioning the invitation as coming from the friend rather than from themselves, avoiding the vulnerability of direct invitation, while engineering circumstance where you attend event they will also attend. The avoidant is leveraging social networks to create manufactured proximity while maintaining plausible deniability about their intention to encounter you. The strategic positioning also manifests through the avoidant, making themselves visible in ways that communicate specific messages designed to generate your contact. They may position themselves to appear as if they are struggling or need support, possibly hoping you will reach out from concern or from your characteristic pattern of caring for them. Alternatively, they may position themselves to appear exceptionally happy or successful, possibly hoping to generate your curiosity or to remind you of what you are missing by maintaining distance from them. Both strategies, appearing to need you or appearing not to need you, serve same function of attempting to motivate your reaching out, while the avoidant maintains their defended position of not pursuing you directly. The avoidant's strategic visibility particularly reveals itself through what they do when accidental encounter actually occurs. If you happen to cross paths in one of the contexts where they have positioned themselves, the avoidant responds with studied casualness that attempts to conceal that the encounter holds significance for them, that they have been hoping for or engineering exactly such encounter. They act surprised to see you despite having positioned themselves where seeing you was probable. They engage in brief friendly conversation that tests your receptivity while protecting them from explicit rejection if you respond coolly. They may end the encounter prematurely, even if conversation is going well, leaving you wondering about reconnection rather than pursuing connection fully, maintaining defended control by ensuring you feel more desire for continued contact than they explicitly demonstrate themselves. The positioning behaviors also include the avoidant maintaining their life in ways that keep reconnection possible rather than making changes that would create permanent separation. They do not move to distant city despite job opportunities elsewhere. They do not fully commit to new romantic relationship despite having options. They keep living situation, work situation and social situation relatively stable in ways that maintain them in your geographic and social orbit, rather than creating distance that would make organic encounter impossible. This maintained proximity reveals that some part of the avoidant is keeping themselves available for potential reconnection, while their defended behavior suggests they have moved on completely. Understanding the avoidant's strategic positioning requires recognizing that these behaviors serve their defended needs perfectly by creating possibility of reconnection without requiring vulnerable pursuit. If accidental encounter leads to restored contact, the avoidant can maintain narrative that circumstances brought you back together rather than having to acknowledge they engineered those circumstances or desired that reconnection enough to pursue it directly. If the positioning fails to generate your reaching out or fails to create opportunities for organic encounter, the avoidant can maintain that they respected your need for space rather than having to face that their defended pride prevented them from pursuing you when their attachment motivated them to desire reconnection. The strategic visibility allows the avoidant to have it both ways, maintaining possibility of reconnection while preserving defended self-concept that does not include vulnerable pursuit of someone important to them. The longer they wait, the more impossible reaching out becomes. The avoidant's decision not to reach out immediately after the separation or after their last withdrawal creates psychological dynamic where the passage of time progressively increases rather than decreases the difficulty of initiating contact. The avoidant might initially believe that waiting serves them, that giving you space shows respect for your boundaries, that waiting until they feel more ready or have more to offer makes practical sense, that time will make eventual contact easier because intense emotions will have diminished. Yet the opposite occurs. As days become weeks and weeks become months, the simple act of sending message transforms in the avoidance psychology from straightforward action into insurmountable obstacle weighted with increasingly complex emotional significance and feared consequences. The increasing impossibility emerges partly through how extended silence changes what reaching out would mean and what it would require the avoidant to address. If the avoidant had reached out after 1 week of silence, a simple message acknowledging the separation and expressing desire to talk might feel adequate. After 1 month, reaching out requires explanation for why they waited that long, acknowledgement of the time that passed without contact. After 3 months or 6 months or longer, reaching out requires the avoidant to address not just the original separation, but the extended silence itself. Why they did not contact you during all that time, what the prolonged absence meant, why they are reaching out now rather than earlier or never. The message the avoidant would need to send becomes progressively more complex and more vulnerable as the duration of silence extends, making the simple act of initiating contact feel more psychologically demanding with each passing week.